So welcome everyone to our latest webinar this week. We're very fortunate to have Kate here, who do you class yourself as a former occupational therapist, or are you still a...
No, still an occupational therapist.
Still an active
yeah.
Therapist, and Kate has very kindly agreed to help us with some support on the Kickstart scheme. And for those that don't know what the Kickstart scheme is, it's a brilliant initiative by the government to help businesses bounce back and help young people back into employment. So if you're interested in more information in that and you're not already using it, I know a few of you are, get in touch and happy to explain it further. So I'll pass over to you now, Kate, and you can, and I won't do you justice, so I'll let you introduce yourself if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so hello everyone. So my name's Kate. I'm an occupational therapist. So I used to work for the NHS, healthcare professional, registered with HCPC and all the relevant bodies. I've worked for 13 years in various mental health settings, but now I run my own private business, offering occupational therapy to adults with mental health difficulties living in the community. I've done lots of group work over the years, and this is part of my new venture into workplace wellbeing. So this is in recognition that lots of people struggle sometimes with the kind of emotional well-being and getting balance in their lives. And occupational therapy, although it sounds very much like it's work-based, it's very much about all the things we do in our lives. So it's about the relationship between our health and well-being and the things we do, and understanding that the things we do impact on our health, but our health also impacts on what we do. So in terms of what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about relaxation. I'm not actually going to teach you a load of relaxation techniques. What I am going to do is give you some tools and strategies to help you think about what is it that you want from relaxation? What is it that you need as an individual in your life that isn't currently happening? How do you get more balance in your life? Because what we all know is that relaxation is not quite so straightforward as thinking, right, I'm going to relax now, because that doesn't always work, does it? So there is a bit of thinking to do. I'm going to talk through some various things. There's a few exercises that if you're able to do that now, if not, obviously come back to this later. That's completely fine. We'll kind of take it as we go and see kind of how people are doing. Okay. So I've just said that bit. What I'd like you to do is just have a little bit of a think. How I think about relaxing. We all know that we need to relax. We all know that we might want to think about relaxing more often or more regularly or more thoroughly. But I'm going to suggest that if you're here listening to this webinar, something isn't working. You're not getting the relaxation that you want. You're not getting the balance in your life that you're looking for. It's quite big at the moment, post-COVID. There's lots of conversation about how do we make sure that we get balance in our lives? How do we look after ourselves? Can't pour from an empty cup. I'm sure these phrases are really familiar to everybody. I mean, the scenes there, if you type those in, that's what comes up on PowerPoint when you think about relaxation. And I think we all know they seem relaxing. It seems nice. But my question today to you guys is going to be, that looks like relaxation, but is that what relaxation is in your life and in your circumstances? Because often what we think of as relaxation, that media stereotype, isn't what's attainable in our lives. Is that making sense for people so far? Obviously, just let me know if you need any questions. So if you're able to, I know people might be multitasking, but have a little think. Maybe even close your eyes. Just envisage yourself relaxed. Not a worry, not a stress, just exactly, perfectly stress-free, relaxed. Now hold on to that image and think about, where are you? What's it look like? What does it feel like where you are? What's the temperature? What are you doing? What is that image? Lovely. Hopefully you've all had a small moment of relaxation just thinking about that. But now what I'm going to do is bring you back to the present with a bit of a bump, because I want you to think about your life. I want you to think about the demands, the commitments you have, the routines and schedules that organise your time, and think about how regularly you get to do that thing that you've just envisaged. This is a bit of a reality check. From 1 to 10, that image you had of relaxation, how often do you get it in your life? Now, I'm going to suggest that most of us aren't going to be on a 10. My image of relaxation was a beach was warm sunshine, a cold drink. It's all lovely and quiet. There's a sea lapping in the corner. I've maybe got a book, but mostly I just lie still in the quiet, enjoying the sunshine. But the reality is I very rarely do that. And that's not just because of COVID. It's also rare that I'm going to do it anytime soon. I've got 3 small children. A relaxing beach holiday is not generally high on the list of priorities. What about you? Did you think of something that feels realistic? Does anybody feel like they're able to kind of comment? If you don't, it's fine. Okay. So how can we change it? How can we change the reality? How can we move from this image of relaxation into our lives? What I'm going to suggest, hi. Oh, somebody's just joined. What I'm going to suggest is that we need to really think about our definitions and our expectations about relaxation. If we're working towards that goal of that beautiful beach where it's all quiet and calm, that doesn't happen regularly in our lives, we are going to be disappointed by the amount of relaxation we have. It's an unattainable goal and it's not a daily expectation. So if that's the only way I can think about relaxation, I'm going to feel stressed because I'm not going to feel like I get enough in my life. What I'm going to say is that what we're going to do today is try and work out, is there more ways to think about relaxation? The media presents us with lots of images of relaxation. There's a really strong narrative at the moment, isn't it, about self-care and try this, the Wim Hof, all sorts of strategies and techniques that kind of go through phases of being trendy. But there's lots of different ways that we can find relaxation in our day-to-day life. I'm also going to talk about how you personally relax is going to be unique to you. The way I relax, that beach, for example, might not be everybody's cup of tea. But the way you relax is also different at different times. There's not one answer to feeling less stress. What can happen at one time is perhaps stressful at another time. What I'm going to talk about is how do you understand your own personal way of working? How do you understand how your life works so you can get more moments of relaxation? And that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about opportunity. If you redefine what relaxation is, you can think about how you can create more opportunity to experience it. You can make it more attainable. Okay? Hoping this kind of intuitively makes sense to people as we're going through. The final thing we're going to talk about is that thinking about, again, it's about noticing. So it's about having attainable goals, but also noticing the good stuff. So the small wins, the moments that we can really build into our habits and routines so it becomes less of a chore to think about. Relaxation can become really kind of ironically a bit of a chore that we never quite get ticked off the list. And so even in our attempts to relax, if those goals aren't attainable, it can become more stressful. What I'm going to talk about is how can we make relaxation more habitual? And a lot of that is about noticing the moments that are available and reflecting on how they help you. Okay. So to do that, what we're going to think about is that we don't live in bubbles. We don't live in sensory bubbles. We don't live in social bubbles. We live in the world. Who we are, how we interact with people, how we interact with things around us, it all impacts on the things we do and the way that we do things. And this is what an occupational perspective is. And that's what I'm hoping to bring to you guys today, is that relaxation is an occupation, as in it's an activity that we do. These activities are influenced by who we are, what our histories are, what our personalities are like, where we live, as in who we live with, but also the physical spaces, the opportunities around. So I'm going to give you an example from my own life. I really love to read. I find it really relaxing. It's something I've done for a very long time. It links me to lots of people. It links me to lots of bits of my life. And it's kind of part of my identity. So you might think, oh, lovely. If you're feeling stressed and you want to relax, off you go, find your book, go and read. But the environment has to be just right. And I have to be in just the right mood. So I can't read when there's lots of noise. So I've got 3 kids. So finding a space where there's not lots of noise is quite tricky sometimes. It also can't be kind of in an overly bright room or an overly busy kind of visual room because I can't relax and focus on my book. And it can't be when I'm feeling too stressed, because if I'm too stressed, my mind wanders and thinks about the things I'm stressed about rather than following the story in the book. So if I do want to read and relax, I need to create an environment that works for me. And this is what we're going to explore today as a team, is we're going to think about how do you create the best setup to get the thing that you need. For me, it's very much about being in the bath uninterrupted with a lockable door so nobody can get involved and disturb me. So hopefully that example makes sense of why we need to think about context and circumstance when we think about what we want from relaxation. So you might be thinking, well, why am I telling you all this? And it really is because telling yourself to relax just isn't so simple. Anything we do in our lives is more complicated than just deciding to do it. We all know that. We make plans, we have good intentions, we don't always follow them through. And particularly with relaxation, it can feel like it's low on the priorities list. Lives are busy. There's lots of demands on our time and our energy. Feeling relaxed often gets dropped off the bottom of the list. So what I'm going to ask you to think about now is thinking about kind of what relaxation is for you. Maybe it's not even the right word. Maybe you just want to feel a bit less stressed, or you want to feel a bit quieter, or you want to actually just switch off. It might even be that relaxation isn't the right word for you. So we're going to think about that as we go through. What I'd like you to think about, take a moment, is just think about what you want to feel less of. So rather than thinking, I want to relax, what are the parts of your life that you want to feel different? Not necessarily better, just different. What would you want less of in terms of your emotional well-being? And then the opposite to that, what would you want to feel more of? Okay. Just going to give everyone a moment. It's tricky without the camera to know who's able to focus now, but I don't want to rush anybody through if they are following through with the exercises. So what we're going to work towards is creating this description. Once you've thought about the things that you would like to feel less of and the things you would like to feel more of, I need you to think about what are the things that you intuitively know help you to do those things, and why do you want to do it? So occupational therapy is a lot about meaning. So it's not about just doing things for the sake of it. It's not about doing things because they're available. It's about doing things that are important to you, have value to you, and are part of your life. When we know why things have value and purpose to us, it makes us more motivated to do it. The more motivated we are to do things, the more habituated they can become in our daily lives, and the more effective they are in helping us achieve that balance that we're looking for. This exercise is going to help people to kind of really find the details. So it's not just about, I want to feel less stressed or I want to feel relaxed. It's about what's the details of that? What's the actual reality of your life, and what's the reality of how you feel? What do you do that works, and why do you do it that way? So I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but first I'm going to give you an example so that you know what I'm talking about. Again, this is an example from my own life. I'm an occupational therapist, but I don't have life perfect. Nobody does. What I do have is the ability to think about and reflect on what works and what doesn't work for me in a structured way, so I don't get caught up in it, which is often what happens when we're stressed. We get caught up in thinking and don't move to the doing. So the feelings that I want less of, sometimes I want to feel less stressed and overwhelmed. Sometimes I want to feel less tired and that kind of busy head, which is slightly different to me than the overwhelmed. It's just about that kind of not being able to switch off. And then I also sometimes want to feel less of that low motivation, that feeling fed up with all of feeling busy, kind of feeling a bit stuck. So there are three different things that I had experienced in my life that I would like to feel different. And I feel that something about relaxation, time off would help with, okay? But the things that I want to feel aren't just about relaxation. They're different for each different emotion. So when I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, what I want to be able to do is I want to get myself out of my head. I want to switch off. I just want to shut down. I want to just not be thinking about all that stuff. And the thing that works for me is physical activity. Now, the reason that that works for me is because it demands my attention. I have to be physically present to be doing a HIIT video, or sometimes I go for a walk. I notice I don't do running because that would be an unattainable goal, which is what we're trying to move away from. So the things I do, I know work for me because that's how I've worked historically. And what they do is that they mean that I can switch off for a set period of time. I know it works. And then once I've had that experience, my stress levels are lower. So I can think again, I can think about what I need to do with my life and what needs to happen next. When I'm feeling tired and busy, when things are just not quite overwhelming, but just like that kind of nagging voice that you have that's like, oh, you must remember to do this, you must remember to do that, that kind of stress. I just want to feel a bit quieter. So I'm not wanting to switch off completely, just want to reduce those thoughts. I want to feel a bit calmer, a bit slower, a bit more able to focus. And the things that I can do there to try and move out of that headspace is, again, it's a different activity. So it's about slow and productive activities. It's about specific focus. They don't take so much energy. So if I'm feeling tired, they feel more attainable, but they do demand my attention. They do demand precision and focus. So these things like calligraphy, I really enjoy doing, cooking, Pilates, different activities for different emotions. This is what I'm trying to kind of demonstrate. And then that last section at the bottom there, when I'm feeling kind of low motivation, feeling fed up, feel like I can't be bothered, just want to just switch it all off. But actually what I need to do is feel more energized. So I want to move away from that low level kind of mood. I want to get out of a grump, basically. So I'm sure that feels familiar for lots of people. So I want to feel more energized. I want to feel focused and in control. And it's really about feeling different at this point. So it's not necessarily about feeling better for me when I'm in that space. I just want to feel different so that I feel less stuck. So things that work for me are things that are kind of engaging, but not massively demanding. So I've put there sort of work, but kind of a nice project. So development work or kind of easy work, like kind of just keeping up my accounts, or nothing that is too taxing, nothing that takes lots and lots of energy. Sometimes I might go for a walk, listen to a book, watch telly. And to be honest, there's kind of a bit of a downer on just watching telly, but sometimes it's just what you need. So that's okay too. Everybody will have different activities and different things that they need for different levels. And it's about just moving me out of that fed up space and into a different place. Does anybody have any questions at this point, or kind of does this make sense to people intuitively? Oh, is there a chat? Sorry, I've just seen there's a message. Ah, okay. No questions. Okay. Sorry, it's not clicking through. So could I just ask, are people able to kind of do some exercises whilst we're working through today, or are people kind of multitasking? I'm going to assume kind of multitasking if there's no response.
Kate, I think Craig's able to. Yeah, if people want to unmute themselves or whatever when they want to speak, that's fine.
Oh, sorry, Craig, I missed that. Okay, what I'd invite you to do then, you don't have to share any of this obviously with the group, that's fine. But what I'd like you to do, if you've got the opportunity, is just take a little bit of time now, sort of 5 to 10 minutes, to just jot things down in these different columns. First thing that comes to mind, there's no rights or wrongs, and it will be individual to you. The idea is that you kind of get into the habit of unpicking how you work. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone a little bit of time to do that before I move on. If anybody has any questions, do let me know.
Katie, is there a process to kind of prioritize the feelings you'd like less of? Is there, do you usually kind of, because sometimes there's more than two, isn't there? Or
yeah, so think about the things that you feel more frequently, that you often think, I don't want that. So often it's the things that first come to mind will be the things that are your priority. So when I say just jot down the first thing that comes to mind, that's often a useful way to do that, rather than taking lots of time thinking about it. And the thing with this is, I'm hoping that this is kind of a taster. So think about the things that first come to mind, but this strategy or this tool can be used for lots of different aspects, whether it's relaxation or kind of work-based stuff. It's about the process of reflecting on how you feel and how you want to feel that's useful to do.
And when you've put, when I feel stressed or overwhelmed or whatever the feelings are, with the I would like to feel, is that not the opposite of that, but that's what you would prefer instead?
Yeah, if I go back to the previous slide, so it's not always the opposite. It's sometimes just about needing a break. It's about what you need at that point. And again, this is about encouraging yourself or having time to think about what is it that would feel useful. So not just this kind of generic idea of, oh, I'm stressed, I need to relax, because that doesn't actually shift us, because it's not precise enough. So it's about, when I'm stressed, I need a break. When I'm feeling low, I need some energy. It's about what's going to help you to move through your day more effectively, rather than just this kind of generic idea of relaxation or less stress. It's about precision and detail, really. Does that kind of answer that question?
Yeah, and there'll be some really common things, but also I'm guessing it's really personalised based on the...
Absolutely. And it's particularly the personalised stuff, the things that you do will be really specific to you. So for me, there's something about movement. For a lot of people, it's about kind of being in the quiet is how they would do that. For me, that wouldn't work because my head would stay busy. I need some distraction. It's about kind of working out intuitively how you know yourself. You will do some of these things intuitively because we're human beings and that's how we work. We find our way to some of them. And what I'm asking you to do here, asking everyone to do, is kind of look for the clues. So look for the clues of the things that you naturally do when you feel those ways. And then what we're going to work towards is how do you increase or augment the impact of doing that with intention rather than kind of intuitively.
Yeah, so it's the not quite prevention, but when you feel the triggers, then
it's about noticing. It's noticing that you feel that way and having, when you're in a calm and okay space, having thought about what's useful. Because when we're stressed, when we're busy, our brain doesn't function the same way. It's not as good at thinking. It's not as good at planning. So do the planning when you're feeling good, and then it becomes easier to implement those activities or those actions when you're feeling stressed.
Okay, that's great.
Does anybody else, Craig, how are you getting on? Have you got any questions about what we're doing? Or anybody else that's kind of working through? No, thanks. Okay. So once you've noticed, and I think as you said there, Mark, kind of it's not just about the noticing, it's about being able to do something about it. So we all notice when we're stressed, but how do you make changes and how do you make them stick? Because again, we can all have lovely plans and lovely ideas about what will work, but how do we make it functional? How do we make it effective in our day-to-day lives? Things I'm going to talk about now, but I've already talked a little bit about there. It's about noticing. Notice the moments that actually are already there. Notice when you feel better and think about what's going on in those moments. Where are you? What are you doing? What is it about that feels good? Because that information is all useful for when you're planning, for when you're feeling stressed. The more we notice how we're feeling day to day, whether it's noticing the stress or noticing the good stuff, the more information we've got to help ourselves make plans and understand how we work as individuals. Everybody's way of working is different. If we can understand ourselves in that way, we can use that knowledge to intentionally create those moments. And that's where we're going to start increasing those moments of feeling relaxed. I'm going to talk to you a little bit in a moment about how that works. Because then once you've noticed, once you've increased and practiced making those moments part of your life, those moments become part of your routine. We all have routines. We are very habitual human beings. The way the brain functions and is structured, it loves a pathway that's well rooted. It loves familiarity. It loves going down the same old paths. So whenever we're making changes, it is hard because we're kind of fighting against our own nature. One way to make those changes is to keep practicing them, is to keep noticing them and to forge new pathways. So whenever you're trying to change the way that you approach anything in life, you need to notice what's going on, you need to intentionally make the change, and you need to do it over and over again before it becomes routine. Okay. So another example from me, just to kind of give you an example of how to notice more moments and how to increase them. So as many people, I have quite a busy morning, getting everyone out of the house, getting ready for work, getting everyone to the right place with all the things they need. What I notice is that some days there happens to be a little bit of space in between all the busyness where I can sit down and have a cup of tea on my own without anybody asking me anything. On those days, I noticed that I had a better morning. So I was more able to do the things that I needed to do without getting stressed and shouting at the kids. So once I'd noticed that, I thought, well, actually, that's not completely unfeasible, that I can't do that every day. So what I aim to do most days, don't achieve it every day, but I aim to find those 2 minutes. I mean, sometimes it's less than a minute, where the kids have gone upstairs to get dressed. I sit down at the farthest corner of the kitchen so I can ignore the mess and just look away from all the chaos. And I look down our slightly bedraggled, but still green garden, and I finish my cup of tea on my own, quietly. As I say, that can sometimes be 30 seconds. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. But When I do that, it enables me to feel more prepared for the morning, and it helps me notice that I've got these moments. Everything feels stressful and overwhelming and busy, but those tiny moments do make a difference. The more you notice them, the more you bring them into your routine. Okay. And the reason I got to that is that I was doing reflection. So I don't know if people kind of come across reflection in their day-to-day lives. There's lots of models out there. It really is about stopping and looking and consciously thinking. Again, we're so busy all the time, automated, keep moving, everything's kind of going through. It's really hard sometimes to take a moment to recognize when you're doing things differently. So what I would encourage people to do is that if you are trying to make changes in your life, is to find a bit of your day where you can do some reflection. Now, that can be written reflection, that can be just while you're doing the washing up, you just think over your day, you think about what worked, what didn't, what was useful, what you might want to try another time. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're consciously bringing up thoughts about how you work and understanding. Again, it's about that understanding about how you work in your life and what works and what doesn't for you. There's no rights and wrongs with reflection. It is just about taking some time out in whatever way that works for you to think about how things are going. So the other thing that will happen in terms of noticing the moments, so I've talked about reflection there, is that by doing these exercises that we're doing today, you've kind of created a more realistic image of what relaxation is. And you also brought it to the forefront of your mind. Again, we're fighting that automatic habituation where we just get through the day and we just keep moving and we're in our schedule and we're in our routine and go, 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 go. What this is encouraging is to bring a change to the forefront of your mind. Be conscious. And the more you look for something, the more you find it. Don't know if people have come across this kind of an anecdote about haven't seen somebody for 20 years, but you have a dream the night before and you think you see them. So you start looking for them and then they turn up. It was kind of an internet thing a while ago. Now, I know that's a bit ridiculous, but the reality is the more you look for good moments, the more good moments you'll find. If you're too busy getting on with life, you won't see those tiny little gaps, those little chinks of opportunity where you can have a bit more calm. Is that making sense? Yeah. So first of all, we're noticing the moments and we're just recognizing that they exist and finding them where we can in our lives. And then we need to be thinking about increasing them. Once we notice them and we know what works, how do we find more of them? I'm going to suggest it's about finding the gaps. So my example from earlier was about noticing that there was that little bit of time in the morning where I could have a bit of quiet and a bit of calm. But what you need to do is find in your life, where are they? It will be different for everyone. Again, another example is if I'm doing the school pickup, I tend to do like a mindfulness exercise because that helps me shift from one role to the other. So it helps me shift from work to school. And I do the 5 senses walk. And that is about kind of noticing what's going on around you and becoming more present. And that really helps me to calm down my busyness, focus on what I'm doing. And it doesn't always last for long because I literally pick the kids up and they're kind of arguing, or I get home and I've got to get back to work, whatever it might be. But it gives me those little oases, little bubbles of calm within the busyness of the day. And again, I know it's hard to spot them and know that life is busy, but they are there. It's about becoming conscious and intentional in looking for them. I'm just going to see, I think this chat's just come up. Let me just find out. They really are important. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in the busyness and miss them. So even if they're small, find those gaps, find those little moments, because the more you notice them, the bigger they'll get. And the more you'll find that you see them. Thank you, Craig, for that comment. Finally, we're going to talk about how to make it happen. And this is about writing a plan. We can all have goals. We all have things that we would like to do. But good intentions aren't always all we need. Sometimes we need a plan. Write it down. It doesn't matter where you write it. It doesn't matter on the format. Writing things down, it organizes our thoughts, but it also makes us psychologically more accountable. So thinking about things, we can think about them forever. But what we actually need to do is make an intentional plan. And that gives us a layer of commitment and accountability. It also really makes us have to think about exactly what is it that we want. So all that work earlier around finding the detail and thinking about when you feel one way, what you want to feel, it's not just about the detail, it's about intention, and it's about understanding who we are and what we want. When we write things down, it helps us keep accountable, it helps us know where we're going, and it helps us look back and assess our success. Often what happens is when we want to make changes, we're not quite sure exactly what the change is, we've got no written record. Did we do it or did we not? Sometimes it's hard to work out if it was successful. If you're writing down a plan, you know what your intentions are, and you know if you've done it or not. And you can come back and amend the plan, you can tweak it, you can switch it as you learn, and you'll become more conscious of your own ways of working. You can accommodate that new knowledge. If you can write it down somewhere that you're going to see it, that's even better. I've already said a number of times, we work on automatic so much. We need sometimes that visual prompt or even an audio prompt to remind us that we intended to do something differently. Don't hide these things away in a CPD file somewhere that you never look at again. Post-it notes on the mirror, note on the cupboard, but when you're making your cup of tea, to just take a minute to breathe. They sound like small ideas, or perhaps sound a little bit silly, but when you're initially making those changes, it can really just prompt you to think and interrupt that automatic behavior and interrupt that automatic thought process. So the more prompts you can create for yourself, the more likely you are to continue working on your action plan. Sometimes having like a nice screensaver that reminds you of the things that you intend to do can be really helpful. So if you're intending to feel less stressed at work and part of that is to take a walk, set an alarm, set a screensaver that reminds you how important it is to do these things. And it's also really important when you're writing a plan is not to just say what you intend to do, but why. So motivation, again, it comes from values. It comes from why things matter to you. If something matters, you're more likely to do it. If it just feels arbitrary, it will get lost. It will fall off the end of the list. Writing down why it matters helps remind us why we need to prioritize our own well-being and prioritize our own relaxation or calm or bit of space, however it is you're thinking of it. You need to think about why that's important. Okay. So kind of move quite quickly today. Hopefully when people come back and kind of have a look themselves, they can take pauses and take that time to think, but the tools are there and the strategies are there. Hopefully by the end of time you've gone through the exercise that we've done today, you'll have defined relaxation for you, so whatever that is and however you think about that. You'll have created some options. So it's about opportunity and it's about everyday life and routines. It's not about that beach or that, going for like a massive hike on a weekday. It's about the reality of life, and it's about finding options that can be available day to day. And you're hopefully thinking about how to notice the good stuff that's already happening. I know life feels busy and it feels stressful, but often there's little moments that we just don't notice that can really make a big difference the more consciously we think about them. And if you do your planning, then you've planned ways to get more moments of relaxation. And if you continue with that planning and then reflection, so thinking about what's worked, thinking about what's been helpful, and move that into your next plan, you've got a way to continue this strategy and continue to use the tools as you develop and as your life goes forward. And then you can accommodate to changes, accommodate to circumstances, and accommodate to how you're feeling. Okay. Is there any questions at that point?
Yeah, I'll open up to everyone else first. Okay, if they want to. Craig said no.
No.
It's really useful. Yeah, if Joanne and if anyone else has got any questions, feel free to ask. But I thought it was really, really good, Kate. Is just useful. Like you said, I think you do some of this stuff automatically. You realise you're stressed, therefore you then. But it's preventing that stress rather than letting yourself get into a meltdown stage. And
yeah, and just know that there's options there, that it doesn't have to be like a big answer to stress. It can be this day-to-day, and the more you do those small things, the more routine they become, the more impact they have. And if you can keep your stress level from getting to that boiling point, like you say, just keep it kind of more consistent, it can be really useful.
And it's just really interesting to me to realize a lot is about structure and organization and stuff, and having a plan of what you're going to do to prevent this stuff, or what you're going to do if you start to feel
Yeah, and doing your plan when you're feeling good, that's the really key bit. Because often what happens is we start thinking about the things we can do when we're stressed, and that's when we're least able to think in a kind of rational way. So, like you say, that kind of preventative aspect can be really helpful. And the more you do it, the more routine it becomes, and then your automatic stuff becomes a little bit more relaxed anyway, because it becomes part of your habit. I'm just aware that I think there's some chats going on there. Let me just.
Joanne just said it was really interesting.
Oh, great.
Craig said nice tip, and people are just saying they didn't have any questions at the moment. But if people do have any questions, is your contact details on the slide? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, so I've got some info on here. So these are some of the things that I offer if anybody wants anything extra. I've also got all the group works running through. It's called Shore Up. It's a community interest company, and that's the details there. That's relatively new. And then all my details are on the slide as well. So I presume with the recording, or I could send slides around if that's helpful.
Usually what happens is Jenny sends the slides around now with the YouTube link as well. So if you can send me the slides through, then Jenny can send those out, and then people can get in touch with you if they want to follow this up, or because like you say, some people might need some help with actual getting that stuff down on paper, to facilitate the getting it out of their head onto a structure is probably sometimes what you do, is it?
Yeah, and absolutely. And often people know they want something to be different, but that kind of thinking about what works for me, they just need a little bit of structure and a bit of support to kind of get to that point. That's definitely something I can offer. That can either happen in a group kind of way, or that can happen individually. There's lots of information on my website about the way that I work and things that I can offer. And yeah, there's lots of options there. But I also write a blog. If anybody's interested, you can kind of sign up to that. So that's kind of, this occupational perspective applies to lots of things. So I started that in the lockdown as a bit of a release, frankly, from the lockdown pressures. But there's often kind of hints and tips in there about ways to approach things differently that people might find helpful.
No, I think it's really useful, and I think we're realizing more and more we need to do this stuff rather than just suffer in silence. Or
exactly. And the reality is that the less stressed you are, the more effective you are in lots of areas of your life. So the more you can get this into your life, ultimately you become more effective and more time efficient. There's just lots and lots of benefits from trying to build those moments of calm into your day.
And I don't know whether you'd agree with it, but I had a client comment on it today, and I emailed them back and said, not what you do, but I said the way we treat our attitude to mental health, because of the way we've been brought up, is the equivalent of kind of breaking your leg and then thinking I'll just suffer in silence, and I'll just let it heal itself and upon. You wouldn't do that if you'd physically hurt yourself, but if you've got mental pain, or you've got stuff that's causing you, we don't get any treatment, we don't do any prevention work, we don't.
It's absolutely, I think it's so hard and kind of to admit it sometimes that you're struggling with stuff, because there's this sense that means that something's wrong, and it does, but it just means that you need a different strategy. So you need a different way of supporting an individual. And I know a lot of workplaces are looking into kind of mental health support these days, and so there's some workplace wellbeing stuff that's really useful. But you're right, I think there's a real stigma around mental health and about seeking help, which is very different to physical health.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that you're talking about here is just making sure you don't get in a situation where you do need severe help. It's making sure you don't break your leg. You just do stuff that keeps you mostly on the straight and narrow, and
And I guess the other message, the really big message, is it's all right to prioritize your own well-being. And I think that's something that, particularly for busy people, it's often a thing that falls off the list first, is your own needs, and your own well-being often comes right down the pecking order. But it is all right to need some time out, because it does help you be more effective in the long run, which is a bit of a psychological shift sometimes for people, I think.
Yeah, when you're running a business, you're always thinking about customers, suppliers, staff. We spoke about this before. When you're a parent, you're always thinking about the kids, aren't you? And so on and so forth. So I think this is really, really useful to to think about, and the main lesson I'm getting out of it as well is that I need to go and play more golf. So that's a great that's a great thing for me. And
yeah, golf's lovely. It's a lovely day out, right? It's a whole day. Never mind 5 minutes.
Although that does sometimes lead to its own stress, the way I play, but yeah, it's I've got an excuse to say to my wife as to why I'm going to play golf.
Well, it just means that when you come back, you'll be, a nicer person to be around and more focused on the here and now. It's perfect.
Exactly, and for other people, it'll be other things, won't it? Not everyone's into
Absolutely.
it. So, yeah, thanks for that, Kate. I thought it was brilliant.
All right.
If no one's got any other questions, I'll just, we'll wrap it up, and hopefully, if people are watching this, Craig's just asked a question.
Oh yeah, let me have a look.
Is it possible to? Yeah, Craig's asked if we can get the slides. Yes. Yeah, we'll send the slides out on email, Craig, to everyone who's registered and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's the normal process. And if anyone wants to review this afterwards, and some people will be watching it on the YouTube channel as well, we put everything up on the YouTube channel so that there's a record of it for people to go and review it as well and share it with other people and so on and so forth. So yeah, on behalf of everyone that's watching it now live and those that are going to watch it afterwards, just thanks, Kate, for the tiny bit of information that you, because it's such a big subject, isn't it? You can't really just cover it in 45 minutes, but thanks for that.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been lovely to be involved, and please do get in touch with me if anybody has any questions or anything that they need to ask. I'm more than happy to respond.
That's great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye.